The Joe Rogan Experience.
I think there's a balance to doing things, and it's highlighted by what you just said. There's a balance, and it's a lot of what we were talking about earlier about Joel Jameson versus Louis Simmons versus like someone who's like super technical versus someone who's just a fucking mad dog and just wants you to just go out and do it and don't be a pussy. Your mindset that allowed you to take that fight with no training and then take another fight after that with no training and then take another fight after that with no just this mindset of fuck it, let's just do this. There's a balance between that and then you realizing, okay, I got to really learn how to do this. If I'm going to really be a fighter, I'm going to really define myself. I'm going to really go out and make a mark. I got to learn what the fuck I'm doing.
Exactly.
There's both things there, but that's that balance. Like you need both things. You know, I mean, it's you have to have a certain amount of fuck it in you. You know, you have to have a certain amount for a sport. I mean, is it calling MMA a sport? It always seemed to me to be. It's too defining. It's too limited. It's not. Fighting is more than a sport. It's an expression of what you're capable of.
Absolutely.
It's who you are as a human.
And that's where one distinction I've made over the years is the difference between martial skills and martial arts. Everybody always calls everything, encompasses it into a martial art. And when we go to the gym and we're training arm bars, do 100 arm bars, that's not an art. That's not your expression of your body in a combat scenario. That's a martial skill. Now, when we go in competition, now we're expressing our art.
Right.
And I think this is an important distinction to be made. I think it's something that I get so tired of hearing, you know, I train martial arts and, you know, I train martial skills and then I express my art. That's
a very interesting way of putting it. How many years after you initially started seriously training were you on The Ultimate Fighter?
4 or 5.
I remember when you were on The Ultimate Fighter and they stole your chew. Somebody fucked with your
That's
chew.
what everybody remembers, yeah.
Well, I remember that because I remember like there's some guys that play tough guy. There's some guys that put on a show and puff up their chest and say some shit that they might not necessarily mean. And then there's some guys that say some shit and you go, uh-oh, this dude's fucking serious. And I remember when they fucked with your chew, I remember watching that and go, this motherfucker's serious. I'm like, Matt Brown's not a joker. And then when you fought Matt Arroyo, that was another example of it. I'm like, there's skill-wise. I'm like, Matt Arroyo's a very talented guy and still is. Good jiu-jitsu guy, good fighter. But there was something, that was a battle of minds.
I agree.
Your mind.
And I don't know if you knew that I fought him before that too.
Yeah, I did.
Right?
Yeah.
But the first time I fought, and this is why it was such a no-brainer to say to fight, I fought him the first time on 24 hours notice. So I wasn't training her. I was training a girl, and she was going to Florida to fight. And when I got there, we're driving to the weigh-ins, and the promoter, I heard him talking on the phone, and I heard him say, you know, oh, we don't have an opponent for him. So I said, hey, you know, what do you need an opponent for? And he's like, well, this guy, Matt Arroyo, you know, 170. And I said, dude, I'll fight. Like, how much will you pay me? And they're like, yeah, $400, $500. I was like, dude, that'll pay my rent. Fuck yeah, I'll do it. And yeah, so, and I said, you know, I can't make weight because I got like 1 hour. And you know, he said it's cool, and fought him on 24 hours notice and beat him. So he wanted redemption for that.
Yeah, there was that fight was in it. One of the things about like watching you fight as someone who's seen a lot of people fight, there's moments in exchanges where after the exchange a guy will try to take a break or a guy will try to catch his breath or move a pace.
The obligatory break.
Yeah,
I call it. Yeah.
There's little breaks, and then there's guys who recognize those breaks and push in. And you're a guy who pushes in.
Absolutely.
When there's a break, you're like, oh no, motherfucker, there's no breaks here. There's no breaks here, and you just get on dudes, and it makes things very intense.
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing about all your fights. They're very intense. You know, there's a certain level of violence that you bring into the octagon that someone has to be prepared for. You know, and there's some guys that are prepared for it and makes for amazing fights, like your fight with Robbie Lawler. Holy shit, was that a crazy fight.
Yeah.
You know, and then there's guys who just can't keep the pace. They just can't keep that keeping you off of them.
Yeah, and I think my goal as a martial artist, as a fighter, martial, whatever you call it, combat guy, I gotta get my skills up to the point where
it matches your mind.
Where it matches the mind, yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of guys struggle the other way.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I talk about a lot that, you see, I don't think that I was necessarily born this way. This is where I think a lot of people get confused. I mean, I was certainly born with an inclination towards fighting. I wouldn't be where I'm at without that. But, I work a lot on my mind. I do a lot of stuff. I've always been obsessed with martial arts and combat as a whole. And I hear other people say they're obsessed. Like Connor, made it really famous when he started saying it, right? I think my obsession goes far, far beyond what anybody's even close to. I don't think their definition of obsession even is comparable to mine at all. I mean, I'm far more obsessed. I've read probably, I got a library of sports psychology books, of strength and conditioning books, of martial arts books, all this stuff. I mean, it's literally on my mind 24 hours a day. But one of the things I really focus on is the sports psychology part. And I think that is why it's expressed that way in the fight. And you hear a lot of people, they'll say, how have you heard, like, man, my mind's already strong. Like, I ain't scared when I walk in there, or stupid shit like that. And and I always say, do you think Michael Jordan stopped practicing layups? Do you think Jordan Burroughs stopped practicing double legs? Do you think that Arnold Schwarzenegger stopped doing bicep curls? Because it's good doesn't mean that you
can't
stop.
Be improved upon.
Yeah, it can be improved upon, and you don't stop. So, and I think the mind is one of those things that can always be better. Like, we're not tapping into, I mean, what are we tapping, like 10% of our brains?
That's all bullshit.
Best?
Yeah, that's bullshit. Yeah, they used to think that. They used to think that. That's something they say, but the reality is your brain has a bunch of different quadrants for all sorts of different functions.
Okay.
So when, you're utilizing a certain portion of your brain, that's the portion of your brain that's responsible for those actions.
Okay.
Yeah. This is not
either way. Our minds are certainly far more unlimited and far more potential than we're tapping into.
Well,
right?
I think your mind is a lot like your body, and it performs and it does what you ask of it. Mm-hmm. And if you just are a lazy bitch who doesn't do anything but sit around and watch TV, and you don't ever challenge your mind, I think your mind is weak and it atrophies.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Now, when you say that you have all these books and you say that you work on your mind, like, do you have a daily practice that you do? Do you meditate? Like, what do you do?
I meditate. Daily is sort of a. I hate saying I do it daily because I skip days, mm-hmm. and I mean, I have 3 kids, which you know how that goes, and it's very. But at the same time, I try to use everything as an opportunity to practice on my mind too, right? How you do anything is how you do everything, right?
Yes.
Right. And so I think we can use opportunities all the time, and but yes, I do meditate. I do tons of visualization. I have my strength and conditioning coach I work with now. He's also got a degree in sports psychology, so we integrate a lot of that in the training itself. For instance, like we do these 200-yard sprints on the forced treadmill that are just miserable. That, I mean, by the time you're done, you just don't have anything left. It's a complete drain. And then as soon as you're done, like, you have to stand at attention, right? I have to stand, like a military attention, straight up and down, and not let the concept of your body shutting down affect your ability to maintain a posture, right? And that's just a mental thing, 100%, right? It's solely mental. That's just one example. We do a million things like that. But yeah, I do tons and tons of visualization, which is a consistent marker of high performers, a consistent thing that high performers do. I think this is well known. I have a mental coach specifically that kind of holds me accountable for a lot of the things. Me and him, we talk a lot back and forth about the different ways to create habits. I think that's probably the number one thing, is creating habits, right? But he holds me accountable for everything, and I think that's probably the biggest key, is just being held accountable for every action that you do.
Have you ever used a sensory deprivation tank?
Absolutely. My strength coach has one.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I love it. and I go in about 45 to an hour.
Do you work on shit in there? Do you think about techniques?
You know, I don't really. I use that as a time. So I try to practice this form of meditation that I can't remember the name of it. This dude, Krishnamaru. You ever heard of him? Krishnamaru? I don't know why it's not coming to my head right now, but he was one of Bruce Lee's guys. He's an Indian meditation guy and everything. And his form of meditation was to completely clear your mind, which is, I guess, like, is actually impossible, right? Like, there's no way to just have no thought at all. But that's sort of what I try to strive for, is go literally no mind at all.
What I do is think about only my breath. That's it. I concentrate on my breathing in and breathing out. And there's a bunch of other shit that gets in there, but eventually I can kind of overpower it and just think only about breathing in and only about breathing out.
So that's what I do to get to that state, right? To get to a state where I can release everything. But at that point, once I'm relaxed, then I go for the no mind, which again it's impossible. But my personal system of visualization or relaxation is I see the thoughts as clouds, and my mind is a sky or space. So my mind becomes this gigantic entity, and the thoughts are just clouds that pass by. But again, when I start thinking about things like that, now you're not in the no mind. If you start thinking about your breath, you're not in the no mind.
Right.
And I want to get as close to that as possible, because in a fight, in a combat situation, I want no mind.
Right.
That's the way that Musashi talks about.
Right. Yeah. Dude,
And
that's Musashi right there.
oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This
Book
was
of Five Rings,
a
man.
play on Musashi.
Beautiful.
Yeah.